全国の自動化を愛してやまない工場長の皆さん、こんばんは。ファクトリオ Any% の時間がやってまいりました。私、本日の工場長こと奏者を務めます松本です。よろしくお願いします。そして、
解説のモノックスです。よろしくお願いします。
Morning, everybody.
野々さん、
It's
今日も工場作っていきましょうか。
time.
行きましょう。頑張りましょ
本日不時着する惑星はこんな感じです。それではゲームスタートしたいと思います。タイマーさん、よろしくお願いします。3秒でいきます。3、2、1。
う。
All
はい、
right.
始まりました。
Off we go.
皆さんグッドラックです。まずは
Alright,
ね、
first
ゲ
thing
ーム
we're
に
going
つ
to
い
do
て
is
紹介させていただき
well, the
ます。
runner's going to do is
ファクト
going
リオはね、
to
自
harvest
動化に
some
関するゲ
of
ーム
these
でし
big
て、
rocks in the
平
map
たく言うと
that will
工
be
場を
giving us
作るゲームです。
some
工場を
stone
作って
and a little bit of
資
coal,
源を
which will
生
be
産し
useful
て
as we
研究を
progress
進め
through
て
the
ね、
early game
最
here.
終的にロケットを打ち上げてクリアになります。
Yep. So most of this early game is setting up.
PC とスイッチのタイトルでし
Oh,
て、
looks like we've got a bit of a
Steam
hang up
レビュー
here.
での
All right,
好
there
評
it goes.
98%、売上トータル250万
Setting up iron and copper, prioritizing the iron to get access to more miners faster. And then we're just going to expand exponentially our factory kind of from there.
Yes, we have crash landed on the ship. You might have seen the yellow debris of it. And all we know is we must build a factory and we must make it large.
The factory must grow. So there's a number of resources on the map. Commonly, we're going to see iron, copper, coal, and stone. We'll get into the other ones later once we get to those. But for right now, we're just getting set up so that we can start doing power generation and then start doing research.
Yes, and early game, we will be making a ton of iron furnaces here. That's because we'll be using a lot of it to especially get the base started and to get a few simple automation processes started as well.
今回は長年にわたって洗練された世界最高峰の工場建設テクニックをお楽しみいただけると思います。ちなみに奏者の松本さんは世界で6人しかいない1時間30分以内のクリアを実現しており、現在は世界3位となっています。1時間30分の壁を越える
So right now, we are setting up our research queue here.
Yep.
To allow basically more things to be put into our base and more things to be crafted and things like that.
So one of the main goals of Factorio is to basically automate as much as you possibly can. So while you have your furnaces running, they're sitting back there, they're producing iron, they're producing a little bit of copper. Because doing and crafting stuff by hand is slow, and you're also only one entity. So typically you'll see the runner go expand the factory a little bit and then go out and get some more specific resources and then come back, pick up what the factory has made to then go make more factory.
Always more factory. But yeah, you'll end up seeing the runner go once in a while to harvest big rocks or occasionally trees. The big rocks give us stone and coal, which we haven't set up anything for yet. And the trees are for wood, which you can't really automate. But
No.
we'll need a decent amount of wood throughout the game.
Yeah. So I guess we should mention, for those unfamiliar, the any percent run here is actually done on a set seed. So Factorio is largely randomly generated maps, and then you can re-roll or modify and tweak the settings to provide different experiences depending on what you're after. You can have really low resources, or you can have really high resources, like we have here.
Yeah, and especially the placement of these resources is very important for getting it consistent runs. Especially with how we have things set up on this specific seed. It helps just streamline the entire factory building process and lets the runners always have a nice set situation.
We've got all of the iron miners we're going to have at the start here. And it looks like copper's just finished getting set up. We also have our coal set up, done in a loop there, so they're just feeding into each other. So they use coal to mine, but then they're also going to mine faster than they use it. So we have basically a giant loop generating coal for ourselves.
Yes, and that coal would be useful for quite a long time throughout all of these little furnaces and old mining drills that use coal in order to work.
That automation's looking a little, research queue's looking a little bit better. Good, good.
さっきまで表示されていたのが研究Qで、この研究を少しずつ進めることによって、ロケット発射までの道のりを、
So at the bottom left corner, you can see the runner's crafting queue. Even though crafting is slow, a goal is to have that crafting queue constantly making something useful. Right, the runner just finished making some of our basic science that we'll be using as a little research boost before we get the science actually automated.
Yeah, so kind of our first beginning setup is pretty well done here. Setting up to do power, and then we're gonna go do our first steam generator, and then the fun starts. Because now we have electricity.
Yes, and with electricity, we can power. I believe the runner's already crafted a couple electric mining drills that we don't have to feed coal into.
Correct. So we get to limit where we drag coal to, which will just be over to the power generation.
And here we see a nice little short-term trick for our power generation. This setup for steam takes a fuel resource, which coal works. So we'll be setting up a mining drill to feed directly into our boilers. It doesn't work long term, but it works long enough for the speedrun.
We had a number of things that happen throughout this, with buffer chests and placing things in spots that are intended to run out, and the factory will stop working if it runs long enough. But it runs long enough to launch our rocket, which is important.
Yes, the enemy percent run does end once we launch a rocket by any means necessary.
While automation is researching here, gonna grab pretty much the rest of the wood that we're gonna hand mine. Make sure we have enough power poles.
And there we have our lab starting to really go with the influx of science packs that we put in. And now we start building what will be a more of a mainstay of our base.
This is our first, I'll call it a half iron line. It'll look a little funny because in this base's particular build, it becomes a very elongated iron line, but we get to see power of automation at work.
Factorio の中でも最も基礎的なアイテムになります。このアイテムを使うことでね、ベルトから自動的に隣の組み立て機やローにアイテムを供給できるというわけですね。ここからはね、どんどん電動掘削機を増やして鉄を増産していきます。さて、ここで組み立て機が完成しましたね。組み立て機で最初に作るのは鉄の歯車ですね。
So we've built some basic assembling machines that give us two resources, iron gear wheels and copper wires. These things can be crafted by hand fairly easily, but each one takes a bit of time. And for now, we would rather have them being automatically made than us wasting our own time in the crafting queue making them.
They are essential components for pretty much everything we're building right now, which is either power poles or green circuits or additional power generation. So, yes, factory will grow.
And for the factory to grow, the power must grow, so we are making more steam engines.
組み立て機を少しずつ増やしていきますね。この間作っているの、どうやってこの電動掘削機や組み立て機を作っているかというと、今画面左下の方にね、クラフト Q というものが見えると思います。これが現在手で制作しているアイテムになりますね。インサートや組み立て機、研究所などはすべてこの手作りで、制作しているということですね。
It's like getting ready to put in the next two research labs here. This is going to increase the rate at which our science is going to be completed. So right now, we only have access to one kind of science, red science. And each research has a required number of potions, red potions, that need to be consumed in order for that research to be completed. So the more research stations we have consuming research pots, the faster our research goes.
And that's the name of the game in a speedrun especially.
ベルトを分岐させたり、地下に潜らせたりする、アイテムですね。それを開発しようとしているわけですね。さて、ここからは蒸気機関やボイラーをね、どんどん増やしていきます。
Our first major power expansion here.
設置したので、それに伴ってね、電力の使用も増加しているわけですね。ということで、これらも増設しないといけないわけです。蒸気機関を増設していいですね。
Power is one of those things we constantly have to kind of keep an eye on. It's routed in pretty well so that you're never running out, but you are going to run up to the line. And once you go over the line, everything in your factory is going to start to slow down because it's all fighting for resources. We try to avoid that if we can.
Yes, especially with all the power needs this factory will end up having. Especially with all of these inserters that you see here. They're handy little friends that will take items from one little set place and put them on another. Right now we are using them to put them in and out of furnaces and their assembling machines. But there's a lot more tech you'll see if you pay attention with inserters.
さあ、順調ですね。次の研究、電子工学に移りました。さあ、今、緑基板を作り始めましてね。この緑基板はですね、今、クラフト Q にもある
set up the copper line here.
素材になります。
Very exciting. So then we'll have iron and copper both getting automated.
And once we accomplish this, we can get started on automating those red science packs a little bit better. Because right now we are only making a little bit to fuel 3 labs, but we will want to make quite a bit more.
Yeah. So as we're kind of timing this both in terms of output productivity as well as trying to progress our research tree. So you saw us earlier messing around in the research menu trying to get a queue set up, and that queue is done in a very specific order to try and get us to the rocket silo as fast as possible. So right now we're headed our way to our green science pack, which is our next advancement, and for that we need to have more factory built.
ものからアイテムを取ると、そして2マス奥のアイテムに物を渡すと、そういう機能になっているわけですね。さあ、ここまで鉄を増産していったわけですが、
put in another full line of iron here.
そして、炉にはですね、鉄の他にこの動力が必要な
Just look a little funny because we're looping our miners around.
And we are also going to be routing in a little bit of coal so we don't have to manually feed all these furnaces. Because the less we have to do back here, the more we can work on expanding and progressing.
緑基板が自動で生産されるようになったので、電動掘削機のアイテムは現在、電動掘削機の元となるアイテムは現在、完全に自動で制作されている状況となりますね。これをすることによって、クラフトが非常に早くなり、時間の短縮が可能になると、そういうわけですね。さあ、どんどん電動掘削機を配置していきます。ですね、Those
4 little miners that are going into the chest there for stone have been doing a lot of quiet work for us. Every one of these furnaces that you see getting built now is coming from that little setup that happened way long ago.
さあ、インサーターを順々に配置していって、ちょっとインサーターが足りないかな。いいですね。さあ、電柱も配置して、ベルトを伸ばして、このようにね、こういった作業の繰り返しで、少しずつ工場が大きくなっていくというゲームになっていますね。このゲームはですね、採掘と精錬、加工の3ステップが基本になってきます。これまで説明してきた通り、採掘はドリル、電動掘削機ですね。精錬はローですね。石のローですね。加工は組み立て機で行われます。これら3ステップの入出力をベルトとインサーターを使ってつなげていくゲームになりますね。電動掘削機とかは名前の通り電動なので電気を使って動くんですけれども、ベルトはね、謎動力で動いています。電気は必要としません。インサーターもね、当然電気を使用しますので、電気の供給が必須になるわけですね。電気の供給するのがこの電柱になるわけです。さあ、ここからのインサータの配置テクニックをご覧ください。いいですね。さあ、鉄が、かなり増えてきましたね。ベルト上に満杯に、生産されております。
And here goes one of the copper smelter lines over an iron patch,
さらに増産していきます。
which is normally not something you do in normal gameplay, as you'd want to mine that iron patch. But you know, we're fine. The speedrun knows what places to put things, and we'll have enough iron.
いいですね。緑基板の増産ですね。組み立て機の設置が終わりま
Yep,
した。
just expanding our starter green circuit line here, getting set up to basically have our little production house for inserters, miners, assemblers, as well as the resources that need to go into both of our sciences, red and green, which will be our copper plate and gears for the red, and our inserters and belt for the green.
緑基板とこの鉄の歯車を同じベルトに乗せるということです
And
ね。
producing those inserters and belts will also help us with our crafting, so we don't have to craft nearly as many of them ourselves. We can just pick a few from our research
はい、
line.
今、
Yeah.
鉄の歯車が生産され始めましたね。
Right now, with everything being in nice, like straight vertical lines, we are minimizing the amount of belt that we need to get things from point A to point B. Especially the way that we have spaced our copper and our iron line, so that everything can just cascade down. We can get wire into green circuits, but green circuits can still pick up iron. And yeah, it's a very cool base design.
And it definitely only gets cooler, because we also have to think about future-proofing our base a little bit, because tearing things down takes time, and we want to do as little as that as possible.
Mhm. We want to make sure that stuff we're producing here still has some value later on. Like those electric miners are going to be useful this entire run.
鉄のパッチとなっていますね。デフォルトのマップならここまで広い鉄のパッチはないんですけれども、これは、資源のパラメータを自由に調節できるので、マックスの値になっていて、鉄が非常に多く配置されているマップとなります。
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the cooler parts of these speedruns, is you don't like tear down your entire base. You actually make your base with all of these things that you like research throughout the game.
このようなビルドはなかなか見ることができないので、ここで見ておくのをおすすめします。さあ、ここが終点ですね。鉄の終点で鉄の歯車を作っておきます。さあ、ここからはですね、先ほど研究所で使っていたサイエンスパックは赤色のサイエンスパックなんですけれども、より上位のサイエンス
I guess we should mention for those not familiar, there are several types of inserters available to us. Right now we have access to our basic yellow ones that are kind of slow, and they do their best. They get us started. From there we have researched our reds, our blues, and our, I think they're purple. I'm colorblind, so it's hard for me. But we've got the long boys, we've got the fasts, and we've got filters. So long ones, like their name implies, will grab things from farther away and put them farther away. So one of the things that just happened was we can have our assembler 2 tiles away, and then we can put 2 inserters to then grab from 2 belts. So we can have up to 4 resources going into an inserter just off of 2 belts, which is great.
Another thing that the runner has done with these things that we have called splitters. You put a belt into one of these devices called a splitter, and it takes the resources in that one belt, and it can put it in 2, but we've kind of used this filter function to put most of the resources that we want onto one belt. It won't be as apparent right now, but there's some very important times where we'll be doing that later to not mess up resource production and movement.
Yeah. Maintaining like your resources on the proper sides of their belts is very important. Not having mixed lines is great. Don't mix your lines.
このぐらいで研究が進んでいるので、もう少しで解禁されます。まだ解禁されていないので、先に研究所を置いて、
and here we start our lab setup. We are going to be producing a great many labs that are also spaced one apart, so we can put some inserters in between, so we can daisy chain all of these science packs through just a couple belts and get them into more labs than we would be able to otherwise.
これが研究所の中に入っていくわけです。さあ、もうすぐ緑色サイエンスパックも生産開始されるでしょうかね。さあ、開始されましたね。OK です。
Green science is finished, so we're going to start producing that. The research for our green science. Yeah.
And now we just set up a little chest setup for pipe making. Pipes are used a lot in this game for both power and I believe some for oil as well.
Yep. And coming up next is actually going to be the start of getting ready for oil. Be very, very important. Even though we only have like 3 or 4 nodding donkeys at some point. But I think right now, the setup is going to be for steel.
Yes, steel is a very important resource in this run. Pretty well optimized from what I've seen. But we need a lot of iron in order to produce steel. So we're going to be producing a lot of furnaces, which thankfully we have a stone setup up that we started earlier, producing enough stone for us.
And a quick shout out to the current research of Steel Axe.
The best Factorio speedrun category, right? The quickest to get the Steel Axe. But no joke, the steel axe is quite useful because we will have to tear down a little bit here and there. That just, especially for like little mishaps for placing things down, that just helps make those mistakes more forgiving.
We can't assume that we're going to be perfect in our placement, so being able to rectify our mistakes quickly is very important.
皆さん、ゆっくり鑑賞していきましょう。これ非常に難しい技術でして、 この3列同時にね、インサーターをこのように配列するのは、なかなか、達成するのが難しいと。
I like the steel setup. Because we have 2 lines of furnaces here, we need to be able to fuel both of them. So we have inserters going in and out of that left-hand column, so that we can get coal in and steel out. And then the right-hand side looks just like a standard iron line. So it's a cool look.
It definitely does look nice, especially since, yeah, like you said, there's a lot of resources that need to go into all of these furnaces in order to make steel. You know, a lot of iron and coal into each one. So we need to figure out a way to route all of that in nicely and cleanly and quickly.
さあ、鋼材が作られましたね。鋼材が作られたら、これを、左の方に運んでいきますね。鋼材を出力して左の方に運んでいきます。この今使っていた青いインサーターはですね、高速インサーターといって、非常に速いインサーターになります。
Spacing on our steel line here is very important. We'll get back to that in like an hour. But just remember that the spacing of how far down that went is very, very precise. If it gets messed up, you're going to have a bad time later. This is going to be for our stone brick line. And we're going to start making our stone furnaces here in a minute.
で、石の炉に石を挿入していきますね。実はですね、ここまで非常に、流暢にですね、アイテムを設置していると思われるんですけれども、これはですね、タイルパーフェクトな工場を作るということで、1マスのミスも許されない、設置になります。つまりどういうことかと言いますとですね、このマップではですね、あらかじめ、どのアイテムをどこに置くかが全て決まっていると、そういうわけであります。何の目印もないように思われるかもしれませんが、実はですね、この地面に生えている草木を目印にしたり、既存のね、アイテムや、アイテムの設置場所を目印にしたりして、非常に精密にね、この工場はどんどん作られている。
Other tech that we have unlocked here is our advanced processing 2, which is giving us a better assembler. So we're going to be making a pile of those and then putting them all over the place.
さあ、この後するのはですね、蒸気管の増産ですね。たくさんの電動掘削機を配置しましたので、やはり電力がどんどん不足してくるわけです。ということで、その電力を補うべく蒸気機関を大量に設置していきます。
Now we tear down more of the ship that we crash landed with. But luckily, we are able to salvage some resources that we can use for crafting.
Yeah, and after all of this expansion that we've just been doing, our power was starting to bump up against the ceiling there. So this is our next power plant, and we're gonna prep for our future endeavors in power.
もう常にね、頭の中で計画しておいて、そのアイテムを事前に必要になる前に作っておくというわけですね。
There are other means of generating power in Factorio. We're just not going to see them in the any percent run here.
Yeah, steam power is both quick to set up and it's not very resource intensive to create. So we will mainly be using steam power, I think exclusively, I believe. There's the other types of power are just fairly slow to set up.
Yeah. And slightly more resource intensive. Like solar panels will use way too much steel. And we don't get far enough down the tree for nuclear.
これも非常に難しいテクニックでして、私はこれはできませんね。これはちょっと難しすぎて、非常に上位のプレイヤーしか使っていない技術なんですけれども、非常に素早くこれを置くことができます。短縮できる時間はね、非常に短いものなんですけれども、これが、後々効いてくると。いろんなところでこの技術を使えますのでね。さあ、この意味深な水を少し下の方に引っ張っていって。
This water line prep is going to be used later. Water is one of those resources that gets used more frequently once we hit the oil stage, which is a lot of the prep work we're doing right now is getting ready to go out and find the oil and bring it back and start messing with it. But before that, we need to make sure we have a lot of our processing up and ready to then utilize that oil to make the stuff that we need, namely red circuits.
ということでね、アイテムの無駄遣いは厳禁です。しかし、タイムが最優先なのでね、そのバランス感覚も、重要になってきますね。
Yes, all this prep is for our next science, the blue science. And that takes quite a bit of resources, as we have spent quite a bit of the last handful of like 15 minutes preparing for, and we are still not quite there yet.
We've been upgrading our iron line, we've been upgrading our copper line, upgrading power, we're going to expand steel here a little bit. And this is just so we have enough resources to meet the demand that we're going to place on our factory for the next science.
アイテムの出力の速度が2倍になったわけですけれども、入力の速度は変わっていないので、電動掘削機をさらに増産していきます。
Also, I should mention, if you are familiar with this game, you may be noticing a lack of enemies dealing with our base. That is due to the speedrun being played on peaceful mode. And we do this just so we can focus on the factory itself and not have to worry about the RNG from defending a base from the locals.
Yeah, the locals get grumpy when we pollute this much, and we are polluting a bunch in this base.
の場所にまとめて作っておくことで、非常にね、アイテムの取り出しを容易にしているというわけですね。
But if that sounds interesting to you, there are default settings runs, and you can watch the chaos of dealing with smaller ore patches and enemies.
掘削機を用意していますね。いいですね。ですね、ここで、一つ見られるのがですね、カーソルに注目してほしいんですけれども、これ普通の Windows の標準カーソルではないんですよね。この十字になったカーソルはですね、このファクトリオのスピードランで使う、松本さん
So those red boxes you might have seen there when the runner went into a chest is the runner limiting the chest. Normally, if you just put automation materials into a chest, the chest will go until it's full. But limiting it means we will only have a handful of stacks of the items being forced into the chest. So we're not being overloaded with an item when we just go to pick it up later.
The inventory management in this run is very important. You need to have a number of things constantly on you, and so you're going to be constantly picking them up. So accidentally overloading yourself with a pile of belt is not a good thing.
松本さんはですね、アイテムの回転を時計回りと反時計回りで使い分けていますね。時計回りのみだと270度回転するためには3回回転の打鍵が必要になるわけですけれども、それを1回で収めるために逆回転を使い分けているわけですね。さらにですね、2回打鍵。
Upgrading all of our old furnaces into our stone furnaces. And then I think we're going to start in with our plastic line prep.
さあ、ここまで非常にいいペースで進んでいるのではないでしょうか。それでですね、次に目指していくアイテムがですね、何かと言いますと、青色サイエンスパックというものになります。今ですね、画面上に見えている緑色サイエンスパックと赤色サイエンスパックがあるわけですけれども、
I guess red circuit line in general. So we're going to need a pile more iron, we're going to need a pile more copper, because we need to make green circuits in mass, because green circuits go into red circuits.
さあ、そのためのね、鉄と銅をさらに、ここでも掘っていきますね。このようにですね、やはり大量に
And simultaneously is also going to be getting ready for blue science, which is then going to be... Oh, my memory's going to fail me. It's what? Engines, red circuits, and sulfur?
I believe that's about correct, yeah. My memory fails me on blue science as well.
ここ初めて見たときはね、なかなか考えてるなと感動しましたね、ここはね。 なかなかちょっと感動が伝わりにくいシーンではあるんですけれども、非常にこれは考えられているチャートですね。さあ今ね、工場の状態がちゃんと動いているかどうかを工場を俯瞰して眺めていますね。最初はですね、今映った小さな研究所の部分から始まったんですけれども、現在ここまで工場が大きくなってきましたね。さあここでもインサータの設置テクニックが見られると思います。鋼鉄のローが多分少しカツカツなんですかね。今ちょっと中の鋼鉄のローが一つ抜けていますね。ここが少し抜けています。しかしこれは予定調和なんでしょうかね。そういうわけではないみたいですね。インサーターを設置したので、ここにも鋼鉄のローが来るようですね。このようにですね、非常にこの時間との戦いの中でもアイテムの生産が多少遅れる場合がありますね。ただその場合でも先にアイテムを設置しておくことによって、後からでもすぐリカバリーできるというわけですね。さあ現在、研究しているのはですね、電子工学といって、発展電子工学ですね。この後、必要になる青色サイエンスパックの素材である赤色基板、つまり緑色基板の
That really cool setup.
素材を作っていますね。
That's so fun to watch. Is getting ready basically to create all of the piping gears that we need to make our engines, as well as getting some additional power generation made for when we need to expand power once we get into the bot phase. さあ、そのベルトを少しずつ下に伸ばしていって、この後でね、下にね、非常に大きな工場を作っていきます。青色サイエンスパックは、初心者が、詰まる最初の関門でして、非常に、大変多くの素材を必要としますね。赤と緑の場合は、すごい簡単な素材でサイエンスパックを作ることができるんですけれども、青色サイエンスパックはですね、なかなかその素材アイテムの製造自体が大変と、ちょっと難しいアイテムになっています。ここからが中盤になってきますね。
And here we go, adding to our copper lines, because we will need quite a bit for all of these circuits we need to start producing.
Not only do the green circuits need copper wire, but the red circuits also need copper wire. So, copper wire production ho.
Yes, at the beginning of the game, we focused mainly on iron, as that was the most necessary resource. But now we're going to start seeing copper get a huge spike in use. As such, we need a lot more furnaces for it.
鋼鉄のローが12台に対して電動掘削機が30台と決まっていますね。これはですね、この黄色色のベルトが1秒間にアイテムを15個しか運べないため、このように精密に数の比率が決まっているわけですね。さあ、ここで緑色基板を大量に設置していきます。ここではね、黄色色のインサートではなくて、青色のインサートをどんどん使っていきますね。黄色色のインサートではね、少し隣に物を送る速度が遅いので、代わりにこの青色インサーターを使っていくわけですね。今後はですね、この青色のインサーターと2マス奥に送れる赤色のインサーターが、主役になってきます。もちろん黄色もね、このように補助で使うこともありますね。さあ、青色インサーターを設置して、導線も、
You'll notice in how we used one of the line splitters and then filtered for iron to go off to one side, but then allowing the green circuits to continue through. Right now, we're storing those green circuits as opposed to letting them go down. A, so that they're available for us to grab and use, but probably so that we can use them later for something else.
Indeed, that is what we are going to be doing. So here we're setting up our first oil cracking section. We have these giant machines that take a couple liquids and crack oil, which we will then turn into plastic and sulfur.
ここで少し休憩ですね。はい。左の方に歩いていくので、少し休憩が入ります。さあ、そろそろ休憩が終わりますかね。はい、休憩終わりです。ここでですね、油性を配置して、原油を掘りますね。原油を掘って、右の方に流していきますね。さあ、ここで流す先は、 原油生成施設という施設であって、原油を石油ガスに変えてくれますね。さあ、石油ガスが生産され始めました。これに伴って、プラスチックも生産
Just
され
like
ます
that,
ね。
plastic has turned
で、
on.
ここから組み立てていく、組み立て中のアイテムが赤色基板の、組み立て機になります。このようにね、非常に大量に赤色基板の組み立て機を置いていきますね。
And with plastic on, it's time to start red circuit production. Red circuits are usually fairly slow to craft anywhere, so we need a lot of assembling machines making them, especially for now, but even more so for later.
この赤色基板も、それと匹敵する量、多く生産する必要があります。さあ、ちょっと赤色インサーターが足りないので、モールに取りに行きましたね。このようにモールを建設しておくことによって、足りないアイテムを即座に補充できるというわけであります。
Yeah, you'll notice, kind of as we're continuing on here, our first line was pretty small, and now as we're getting further in the tech tree, we need more resources to go into it, right? Because we're building off of things we've done previously, but we also need more of that resource.
抜けがないように、設置していきます。
So our factory is going to get very large.
Yes, but it is getting quite slow placing everything by hand. So once we, a bit after we start producing blue science, we will need to take measures to rectify that.
さあ、赤色基板第1号が生産され始めている頃でしょう。さあ、次にね、作っていくのは、硫黄というアイテムですね。硫黄はですね、非常に簡単な、素材でできますね。水と石油ガスから硫黄ができます。これもね、青色サイエンスパックの、素材になっているというわけですね。このゲームはですね、やはりインベントリの内容量が決まっていまして、このようにアイテムを多く持ちすぎていると、インベントリ内がいっぱいになってしまって、アイテムを持てないという状況になっていますので、アイテムを持ちすぎるのも厳禁というわけですね。さあ、ずらっと下の方にベルトを伸ばしていって、ここから作るのはですね、エンジンと青色サイエンスパックの組み立て機ですね。
In this setup, we are going to start producing the engines, which is the next step to automate blue science.
エンジンの組み立て機を配置して、
See, we've kind of got a mixed belt happening here with sulfur and red circuits, and then we've got our steel and that other mixed belt of pipe and gears, and all of this is just going to be a lot of long boys feeding over into blue science, which then gets filtered up at the top there and then sent over to the science.
本当に感動しましたね。これはなかなか普通のプレイではね、自分だけでは見つけることができないと。
And you may have noticed us placing these crafting recipes into all these assembling machines went pretty quickly. That's thanks to copying and pasting ghost recipes, which makes it so we can place things very quickly in the game. But we did that using our map feature, which allows us to look at just a little overhead view of where we currently are, and just mass place them very, very quickly. We'll get to see a lot more of this as we start getting into robots.
Yeah. We'll be making some blueprints soon, in fact, as well as copy and pasting.
And we need to make blueprints, because I believe the any percent rules specify you cannot bring in blueprints.
Correct.
Yeah, from other save files.
少しずつ研究を進めたり、このようにアイテムをどんどん製造しているというわけであります。さあ、研究がどんどん進んでいますね。
You'll notice our runners constantly kind of full in their inventory right now. This is back to that. The inventory management in this is very tight. You need to make sure you have everything you need on you without having any extra. And that's very hard to do because you pick up a lot of random stuff running over belts and trying to be fast. And yeah.
Yeah, we've already seen the runner throw some random ore that he's picked up in a chest just to forget about it and get it out of his inventory quickly.
さあ、ここで研究しているのがですね、応用原油処理といって、普通の原油処理では石油ガスしか 生産できないんですけれども、ここでですね、軽油と重油を、生産できるようにしますね。軽油と重油は、ゲーム後半に行くにつれて、どんどん需要が高まってくるアイテムでして、ゲーム全般を通して使うアイテムになっていますね。これも流体アイテムです。ファクトリオというゲームはですね、固体と流体という2つの、アイテムの、性質がありまして、これを柔軟に使い分けて、アイテムを製造していくというわけですね。さあ、ここで、作成するのは電池ですね。電池を生産していきます。これも後ほど必要になる素材アイテムですね。さあ、電池の素材となるのは当然、硫酸になりますね。硫酸は硫黄と鉄板から作られますね。ということで、
And all of a sudden, we have both sulfur and battery production, as well as a radar.
Yeah, so radars are mildly important for this. A, it gives you sight in your map. But B, you can only place things in visible areas. So when you're setting down blueprints and such, if you don't have line of sight into that blueprint, it'll actually just cut it off partway.
Yes, so we want to make sure to put radars in a great many of our areas in our base, just so we don't have to worry about placing them later.
It's very nice, though, that they have a giant range. So.
さあ、いい感じです。で、ここで意味深なパイプを引いてきまして、ここでね、応用原因処理をどんどん、やっていきますね。なかなかね、このようにね、計画的に、工場を建設することは難しいのでね、やはり最初始めた頃は行き当たりばったりで、あ、これが足りないとか、あれが必要だとか、まあそういう感じでどんどん工場を建設していくと思うんですけれども。
A lot of the setup right now is in preparation for construction of the bots, as well as getting some supply chests ready for the bots to pick up from. So construction bots and logistic bots both do slightly different things, but they're a whole new mechanic that gets introduced at this like mid-game stage where you can basically automate your building and allocation of resources into different parts of the factory. So it's a huge learning step, kind of like handling fluids was a big learning step in how to handle pipe and undergrounds and all that. Learning how to control the bots is a massive learning step.
Yes, and in order to control the bots, we will need to end up producing little bases for the bots to operate from and recharge, as well as chests, which bots can only take out of specific chests, not all these steel and iron chests that we've been making lately.
Here the blueprint making has started. These are basically, you go in, you copy a part of your factory, and then you can save it for later. And then you can plunk that blueprint down elsewhere, and then either rebuild it by hand with, a template put down for yourself, or it's how the bots know where to put stuff and what to put there. And then things like recipes are already set in your assemblers, which is super handy.
Yes, that saves us a significant portion of time as the base goes on, and as you said earlier, we need more and more and more resources and assembling machines for every step.
さあ、設置し終わりましたね。あとは、この建設ロボット工学というものが、研究
You're
し終わ
very
った
close
ロ
to
ボットを
being
体験することができると
bot
いうわけ
capable.
ですね。ここでですね、少しアイテム整理や、あとは足りないアイテムの生産などを行っていきますね。さあ、至るところで緑基板が生産されていますね。親の顔より見た緑基板ということで、大量にこのゲームでは緑基板を生産していきますね。さあ、ロボットの研究が終わりましたかね。さあ、そろそろロボットの組み立て機を配備する頃でしょうか。赤色サイエンスパックや緑色サイエンスパックも正常に動いていますね。 さあ、この青色サイエンスパックも、このベルトに乗って右の方にどんどん流れていますね。それで最終的にはこの赤色と緑色の、サイエンスパックと同じレーンに来て、この研究所に渡されるという仕組みになっていますね。さあ、ここでロボットを解禁しましたね。はい、
Bots are ready. Roboport is down. Let the fun begin.
さて、ロボットが解禁されたわけなんですけれども、ファクトリオのね、チャートはおおむね2パートに分かれます。それはですね、このロボット前後でゲーム性が大きく変わるためですね。このロボットの前はですね、決められた流れを
Now you see us changing all of these chests that we've stored materials for us to go pick up. We've replaced them with these chests that have these little error symbols right now. These are for the robots to pick up and move around. The error symbols were just because they weren't in range, but now thanks to the Roboport we just placed down, they will be. And that means the robots can pick things up and place things down for us.
Yep, so there's a variety of chests, and we're not going to use too many types. The primary one we're going to use here is these red ones, which are a passive provider chest. It just means anything in this chest is available to the network for the bots to grab and go use.
It also helps a lot with inventory management. We can now just place down a red chest and put a bunch of stuff in it, and the bots will end up using it. And now we are seeing both a great power expansion, but also the first big display of what our bots can now do.
So a couple of those blueprints we made earlier, this mining rig, as well as that copy and paste of our power line there, are both going to cue our bots to be busy. Very, very busy.
今、この透明に配置されているものがゴーストと言われるものでして、このゴーストの、建設計画を頼りにロボットたちはアイテムを、設置していきます。つまりですね、ロボットはですね、プレイヤーの思った通りに、アイテムを設置してくれるわけであって、プレイヤーはこのゴーストを設置するだけで、あとは自分の手で設置しなくていいという感じになりますね。今、ロボットがアイテムを少しずつ運んできてくれていますね。このように一つずつ、アイテムを運んでくるわけですね。ゲーム後半になるとですね、空をロボットが覆い尽くすほどの生産量になって、非常に速いスピードで建設が終わりますね。
Now we are waiting for our bots to do their work. We gave them pretty much all the resources they need to do that power expansion. And now it's time to set our sights towards our next expansion, which is going to be for kind of our main, I hate to call it our main mall, but it's kind of what it is. This is the stage where we're going to massively increase our production capability with the help of our bots, as well as continue to progress our research.
Yes, and our next research expansion is going to be a large one, so having all these resources at the ready and enough bots to make use of them is going to make things go much smoother.
このゲームのですね、ストーリーはですね、非常に簡素なもので、あるエンジニアがエイリアンの生息する資源が豊富な星に墜落してしまいました。工場を作ってロケットを打ち上げよう。以上というわけですね。非常に簡素なものになります。このストーリーはですね、不時着した直後、に見ることができます。それ以来はですね、特にストーリー等はなく、ひたすらアイテムを設置して工場を建設すると、そういうゲームになっているわけですね。
Outposting we go.
最初、松本さんが走る前にですね、不時着予定地はここになりますと言っていたわけなんですけれども、2% ではですね、マップシードの固定が許されているので、毎回同じ星に不時着しているというわけですね。ということで、自分で不時着する星を選んで、そこで工場を建設しているというわけであります。ちなみにですね、ロケットに乗ってこの星から脱出したりはしません。実は工場を作りたいだけなんですよね、この工場長はね。2% では出てこないんですが、 この星に住むエイリアンのバイターというものがいるんですけれども、これはですね、工場の
So you see this line that we just kind of copy pasted over and are now editing? So this is something that we set up when we made red circuits, right? And are now utilizing this exact same layout to then build our mega mall for our eventual blue circuit production. So it was a lot of really, really good planning and foresight to design this the way that it is.
ゲーム内のアイテムにちなんでスティーラックスと言います。スティーラックスというのは鋼鉄の斧ですね。鋼鉄の斧というのはこのアイテムを、除去する作業が2倍のスピードになるというアイテムですね。今回ここにはですね、チャットアシスト
As you can see from the sheer number of
これはですね、チャットアシステッドスピードラン
belt lines that are going to be fed into this. This is not a small expansion.
よく訓練されている視聴者が簡単なミスも複雑なミスをチャットで指摘してくれますね。奏者はですね、チャットを読みながらのスピードランになるので大変ですね。つまり、この中に訓練された視聴者が混じっているということになります。皆さん、犯人を探し出してみてください。皆さんもね、気軽にミスを見つけたら、ぜひ指摘してくださいね。このスピードランではですね、少しのミスも許されないため、一つの走りをみんなで作ろう、みんなで成功させようという非常にスポーツマンシップにのっとったものになっています。これはですね、コミュニティメンバーの仲の良さにつながっていて、他の人がスピードランをやっていれば、誰かしら見に来てくれる、誰かしら応援してくれると、そういった環境になっています。実際ですね、私もたくさんの、スピードランのランを走りをですね、助けてきましたね。ここが間違ってるよとか、ここ忘れてるよとか、そういうことですね。そういうことを、スピードランナーに、指摘してあげることによって、そのスピードラン一つを守ることができると、そういうわけですね。もちろん、自分も何度も助けられましたね。視聴者数数人の自分の配信にですね、世界王者が見に来てくれたこともあるくらいです。それはですね、非常に温かくて嬉しいものでありますね。さて、2% ではですね、マップシードが固定できると言いましたが、普通はランダムですね。なので、より良いマップシードでプレイするためには探さない
And now here we are going to start mining up all of these resources that are down here in order to feed what's going to be a very massive expansion zone where we will make a lot of different items, including the next science pack or two.
自分の環境では仮想 OS などを含めて合計5台のパソコンで解析を行っていました。もちろん今走っている、松本さんのマップには至らなかったんですけれどもね。今回走っている 2% の他にも何個かカテゴリーがあります。今、ファクトリオスピードランコミュニティで流行っているのが 100% カテゴリーと言われるもので、これはですね、全実績を解除するカテゴリーです。世界記録は5時間で、走っている彼らはですね、地球上のファクトリオ星人の中でも神の領域に達していると言われますね。とにかく難解で、たくさんの精神力と体力を要します。他にはですね、マップシード完全ランダム、資源量がデフォルト縛りのデフォルトセッティングスもあります。これはですね、ファクトリオの動画で有名な SS さんも走っておられますよね。このゲームはですね、性質上
It will always be crazy to me the difference in gameplay between what we just spent the first 50 minutes doing, and then the bots come online and suddenly our factory just explodes.
Yes, that is an incredibly useful mechanic that we very much are glad to use to our advantage in a speedrun. And just look at all these little robots flying around the entire map, which we are automating production of. So we'll only get more and more as the next 45 minutes to an hour goes on.
Yeah. And they have a really adorable sound. They sound so cute.
さらに上位のアイテムを生産するためにまた新しく、銅板と鉄鉱石を掘ってきて大量のアイテムをここで、変換するという工場になっていますね。ここではね、
So you may have seen down just a little below where our screen is right now. We actually are going to have two roboports in a section. A roboport both has a range and a number of charging spots for all these robots. Well, our robots are going to get very tired, so we need a lot of charging spots, and that just helps them charge a little bit faster overall.
ここでもさらに原因処理施設を設置していくわけですね。ここでもやはり感動するのが、
This is our next big oil expansion. We are going to be very oil hungry. Got a few things that are going to be coming in that need the oil. We need to make sulfur, obviously, or plastic for our red circuits. But then we also need some sulfuric acid for our blue circuits. So both those are going to require some oil, as well as, in the future, our rocket fuel is going to need to be made, which is a few more steps, but
a few more steps, but just like a lot of things in this run, we need to think of everything in advance so we can plan our factory correctly. We don't want to run out of space where we really want to drag a line of belts somewhere and not have the space to do it.
ここが最も大事な部分になってきます。ここはですね、終盤ロケットの生産に必要な、素材のアイテムのさらに素材となる、
here we're setting up a very specific line, basically. We're basically getting ready to copy and paste this all the way down as well. But before we do that, we need to make sure it's built correctly. Because any error that you make is going to get copied into the rest of it, so there's time to be precise.
今なりましたね。今青色基板になったところですね。さあこれを、コピーしますね。コピーペーストが、プループリントが可能なので、コピーペーストしていきます。はい、ペーストしました。これでですね、ロボットが
And yeah, here we are copying, pasting a lot of blueprints, so our robots can get to work. It's actually a pretty big challenge in the speedrun to keep up with these robots at times. Sometimes they just go a little too fast for you to keep up with.
Yeah, and at the same time, you're racing your research speed to make sure that you're not behind.
And on top of that, you typically still want to be crafting something useful if you are able to.
Yeah.
So you're racing a lot of different things at the same time, which makes it a very entertaining thought process.
青色のさらに上位のサイエンスパックというわけですね。このゲームにはですね、合計6種類のサイエンスパックがあって、残りの3種類があるわけなんですけれども、そのうち1種類はスピードランでは使わないので、残り2種類を生産して
The fact that this run has seen a couple of different maps, which obviously will then mean that we have very different factory layouts, is nuts. The time it takes to go through, because everything's ratioed, right? Our miners mine so fast, our belts can only carry so much. Everything produces at certain speeds, so it can all get figured out theoretically ahead of time. But that's a lot of work. And the fact that we've had multiple maps done in the any percent category is crazy. Because every time the map changes, you got to do it all over again.
Really speaks volume to how dedicated some of the members of the community are, that they're willing to put in all of this insane amount of work for both figuring out the ratios every time something has been changed and figuring out the new bases for the map layouts.
Yeah.
さあ、アイテムを、ロボットにどんどん渡していますね。このロボットに渡すアイテムはですね、チェストの中にどんどん入れていくわけなんですけれども、
It's so pretty. Look at the bots go.
ロボットは決められたチェストの中からしか
You know you're playing the game right when you have an army of bots flying around helping you out.
ち
なみにこのチェストはですね、 非常にすごいチェストでして、プレイヤーのインベントリもそうなんですけれども、
Oh, so here's going to be a very important little setup here. It looks extremely complicated with belts, inserters, and splitters doing that little priority trick, making sure certain materials only go to one side or the other. But that setup will be useful a lot later, and it'll be it's a very good thing to get set up right now.
Yeah. That's an extremely important sorting to happen there, because that's going to help get everything to our final two sciences and some of our rocket production. It's all going to happen right there. I suppose we talk about modules a little bit, since we're producing those now. So there's 3 types of modules in the game. There's efficiency modules, speed modules, and production modules. Efficiency is great for casual play. It reduces the amount of power. We're not going to use those. We will use speed and production modules, though. Speed does exactly what it sounds like. It speeds up the production of whatever it's in. Only certain things can accept a module. Assemblers are one. But you get that speed up at the cost of additional power. And then production modules only work on certain items. You can only speed up certain things that are pretty low level. But then you get kind of a progress bar, and every time that progress bar fills up, you get an extra of the item being produced. So it's both of those are going to get placed strategically throughout, as well as are going to be required to build some of our science.
Yes, and I believe we may have a modular 2 in some buildings already. And as you can see, as we place these places down for the bots to build, we can also place down modules to go into these buildings, so we don't have to worry about placing them in ourselves.
Another bot management trick is happening. You'll notice that even though we're already have like a giant factory, we're going to continue to expand that mall area. But we didn't place it all down at once, because that kind of confuses the bots, and then doesn't know how to prioritize the order of build. So then it won't finish a line right away. Like, it wouldn't do it the way we would, of just, alright, first line, second line, third line, fourth, and down. Bots will just, whatever's currently available, will grab and go, because it doesn't understand that the line needs to finish in order to be productive. So what we do as runners is we'll place 1 or 2 lines at a time, wait for them to be complete before expanding further down.
Yes, the bots try their best to help us, but as they get confused, we need to give them a little bit of directions at a time.
So that first steel line that we've been using is finally insufficient. It is time to expand steel.
Yes, occasionally a run may have steel be slightly insufficient by now, but we keep it the same as normal. But now it's definitely time to expand, because we need a lot of steel coming up here.
Yeah, railroad tracks are not friendly to the steel line.
さて、今ですね、画面右上の方で、見えるロボット
Ah,
That
there we
little-
just.
という研
Go
究
on.
Yeah.
があるんで
Go
すけれども、これ
Uh,
ロケットの
that little
中
mini
が
setup there was the getting ready to copy and paste that out for both of our final sciences.
固形燃料と軽油というアイテムから
Yes,
作られ
the
てますね
plan is to place them both down at the same time.
なるべく早く
Uh,
作っておい
just because
て
they
もうロケットを飛ば
we're
したい
already
という時
making a
には
giant
ですね
factory to
必要
begin with,
量が
might as well
揃っている
get
という
things
状況
sorted
にしたい
as
わけです
quickly as possible, so we can launch our
なので
rocket
先に研
within the
究
next
しておくん
hour.
ですねさあこれはですね、非常に細かいことをしているんですが、なかなかここら辺で忘れることも多くてですね、ここを一つでも忘れてしまうと、やはり、これはうまくいかないと。タイムが伸びてしまうわけですね、具体的には。もちろん、その致命的な失敗をすると、もうタイムも、
So,
ないんです
gone back through, added a bunch of modules to our earlier science production, and this is because we are going to be expanding the science mall not too long from now. We want to make sure that the production of that early science is going to keep up with that expanded mall. We're not quite there yet. That's going to take place shortly after we get the rest of our science turned on. But
And as you see, we've placed productivity modules in all of our labs, so as the lab process goes on, we'll get a little bit of bonus points towards our research every once in a while.
Yep. And this helps us limit the amount of our final two sciences that we need to make. So we've been producing red and green, since the beginning. We're going to continue just producing the crap out of it because we need it. However, that's not going to be the case for our final science. We are going to very, very specifically limit the amount that we make because we know we only need so much, so we're only going to produce so much.
あとはですね、アイテム設置の順番ですね。これが非常に正確なために、毎回安定したプレイが可能になるわけですね。もちろん松本さんもその一人ですね。なので、ここまでは全て予定調和と、いつもの走りでもやっているよという感じの、作業になります。さあ、少しずつ研究が進んできていますね。これはですね、ロケットサイロに必要な研究を少しずつ進めていますね。ロケットサイロというのはですね、ロケットを飛ばすための土台なわけなんですけれども、この研究を進めるためには、たくさんの、前提研究を進める必要があります。ということで、その前提研究を現在進めているというわけですね。このロケットサイロの研究をいかに早く終了させるかが、このスピードランの肝となる部分ですね。ロケットサイロの研究が早く終われば終わるほど、早いタイムでこのスピードランを終えることができます。
And there's our expanded science setup for our bots to get to work on.
画面中央に見えたのが、たくさんのアイテムがベルトに乗っているところですね。こんなに一つのアイテムが、一つのベルトに乗ってていいのかと。
And we need to expand our science because some of these researches coming up we need a lot of research points in order to complete them.
必要なものを必要な場所に送っているというわけであります。さらにここで石炭と蒸気管の
The silo takes, what, 1,000 of each?
Sounds around correct.
このゲームでは重要になってくるので、電気のマネジメントも常に行わなければなりません。さらに、銅のレーンも足していきますね。
We've got a little more prep here and a little more expanding of our main mall to do, but then we're going to start looking at getting our rocket components going. So right now our mall is making all of the important stuff for us. Red circuits, blue circuits, low density structures, modules, like they're all coming out of that giant production center that we've been making. But that's pretty much just useful for our science and our research side. Now we need to start looking forward to, we need rocket parts. For rockets, we need rocket fuel, computer control, and what's the third one?
Low density structures?
We do need the LDS still. Yeah, okay.
本当にね、プレイしてほしいですね。一生に一度はプレイをしてほしいゲームですね、これは。ファクトリオのゲームのこのクリア自体はですね、ロケットを打ち上げる部分でクリアになるんですけれども、その後も当然プレイの続行は可能です。ファクトリオですね、ロケットを打ち上げるまでももちろん充実しているんですが、それ以上にですね、このロケットを打ち上げた後のプレイも充実していますね。つまりエンドコンテンツが非常に充実しているというわけであります。ですね、よく知られているのがマインクラフトですかね。
You'll notice a change to the end of our mall here, and that has to do with our limits of how much, ore and plate that can be carried by a single belt.
もはや PC が読み込めなくなるような超巨大工場を作る人も、たくさんいらっしゃいますね。
Yes, our current belts don't really move a whole lot, but we make them work for as long as we can.
Yeah. There are 2 upgrades to belt that can be found in the game, and we're just not going to use them. Red belt doesn't exist. White belt doesn't exist, as far as we're concerned.
アイテムの数を増やせるアイテムになります。そこに OP ってやつですね。これはですね、例えば鉄板1から
We might see a little bit of red belt use towards the very end here, but
それを2倍にできると、鉄板1から違うアイテムが
Yeah, it's not
作れるという
that
アイテムにな
important
ります
throughout the run.
このグレードをですね、どんどん終盤に行くにつれて上げることによって、最終的にロケットサイロで必要なアイテムを減らすことができるというわけですね。
I see them in the inventory there.
ロケットサイロ
Beacons.
ではですね、
Want to talk about beacons?
Oh, beacons are lovely. So all of these modules that we've been putting into buildings, each building only has a certain amount of module slots. However, we have these items called beacons, where we can place them down and put modules in there, and they have an AoE effect for the modules, albeit at a little bit of a cost to the module's efficiency. So, we have all these productivity modules in these labs, and we can put other modules if we want to in these beacons surrounding the labs, so they have more effects than just the productivity.
このようにファクトリオのアイテムを隅々まで使って、スピードランをどんどん早くしていこうというわけですね。さあ、これで最後のミックスビルドのレーンが完了したでしょうか。さあ、ここからはいよいよ最終盤ですかね。最終盤ですね。ここで作っているのはですね、ロケット制御部品と言われるもので、やはりロケットサイロに必要なアイテムのうちの一つですね。ここではですね、回路というものを使っていて、非常に難しい操作をしているんですけれども、これはですね、最初のうちは分からなくても大丈夫です。ファクトリオを長い間やっているプレイヤーもですね、この回路は
There we are starting a little bit of a pre-build of what will be our rocket production.
プログラムと同じようなことをこの組み立て的にさせようとしているわけですね。これによってですね、非常に高度な操作をこの組み立て機やインサータにやらせることができるようになるわけですね。
This will be our first and only use of circuits, or I guess our logic modifiers.
いう理由もありますね。これを使ってですね、もうプレイヤーが何もしなくても
So there's another mechanic in the game that we don't see much use of, but here it's going to exist where we can string our power with a certain color of wire and then put it through a filter of sorts, so that we can basically have a little bit of logic around when and how much it's going to produce. So you can gate when your inserters pick up an item, or when a assembler turns on or off with these circuits.
Yes, and it's very useful so we don't overuse resources or overproduce what we don't need a lot of.
この中央のですね、空いたスペースは何かと言いますと、ここにちょうどロケットサイロがはまる形になっているわけですね。
Because as we move into the later stages of the game here, we do need to make a lot of items, but we don't need to make an over amount of them. We know how much we need to make in order to finish the game.
Yeah. While our early factory is going to do some overproduction, we're kind of done with it. It's not really hurting anything. For these late stage items, because there's so many steps to get them made, we want to be very conservative with their use. Be very precise with their use.
足りないアイテムには部品を渡してやるといった操作をして、ロボットの助けをしているわけですね。さあ、ここまで非常にいいペースで進んできていますね。
We're getting down there in the research. Our silo will be coming up soon, which means we're going to start prepping for the making of said silo, which takes a couple new resources, namely concrete.
8時間以内で 0.1% ということはですね、1時間半のプレイヤーはどのぐらいいるかということですね。やはり、
You might see the runner use this little red box in the map instead of using a blueprint. That is for the robots to tear down stuff. Robots take down things significantly faster than we could on our own. So we prefer at this stage of the game to have the robots even take things down for us.
まあそれでもですね、やはり世界ではまあ60位以上となかなかちょっと渋い数字になってしまうんですけれども。
Yeah, for such a tiny little bot, they are very efficient at deconstruction. They show up, they look at it, and then they pick it up off the ground.
さて、黄色サイエンスパックや紫サイエンスパック
Such
が
friendly, very helpful little helpers.
この5つのサイエンスパックで研究しているのが見えますね。
And here we are placing down a lot of beacons in this little area that we've kind of sectioned off in the middle of our base. That is where the rocket silo is going to be going once we finally build it. And at that stage of the game, we're just going to want to get things done as fast as possible. So all these beacons will be full of speed modules.
Remember that first steel line that we made? And you see in how we've got, just underneath it, we've got a mixed stone and, I guess, stone brick line. And then just below that is science. And then right next to it is our, I guess, our science research centers. Yeah, that's that really tight space I was talking about 40 minutes ago when we were setting up that steel line. The forethought in this factory is ridiculous. It's extremely tight.
And that's one of the things that makes it very pleasant to watch. You see all these little spaces that just get filled up over time.
So
here you've been seeing the runner start ordering the robots to change things over and tear some parts of the factory down that we are no longer going to be using. I believe he switched over some of the modules in that massive expansion factory that we've made.
As well as turning off, I forget which module it is, and switching it to the one that we need. And I'd have to look up whether that was speed to production or production to speed.
I believe it was production to speed.
いやー、ちょっとやってしまいましたね。さあ、ここからどうしますかね。ロケット制御品なんとか間に合いますでしょうか。
野々草さん。
はい、入りましたね。松本さん、はい。
やらかしの男が戻ってきました。
いやー、これはちょっとなかなか大変なことをやってしまいましたね。
Hey, Silo's getting researched.
And we are officially moving towards the end of the run. And now it's just a race against time to get everything prepared to build the silo and to fill the silo before it actually finishes researching.
Yeah, it's a decent bit of prep work to do, making sure you first emptied your inventory, so you have enough space for all the stuff that's required here. Then setting up this concrete factory with a very specific number of assemblers, very specific amount of iron in the inventory to make the 1,000 concrete that we need. And then run around the rest of the factory, picking up all the stuff that we need for the rest of the silo.
このスピードモジュールはですね、最終版のロケット制御部品にも使うアイテムなので、たくさんの数が必要になるわけですね。
So he's been checking on the science production, making sure enough of the last science is getting produced. Because, as we mentioned earlier, it's very tight. We knew how much we needed to make, and so we need to make sure that we actually made that much. Otherwise, we're going to stall out at like 98% researched and be very sad with ourselves.
そうですね。今松本さんが言われた通り、この黄色サイズパックはですね、もうクリアに必要な数がすべてできってしまったので、もうこれはいらないというわけで。
Thinks he has enough, so just turned all the green science off, or yellow, whatever it is.
これでですね、ロケットサイロに必要な素材がですね、鋼材が1000個とコンクリートが1000個。
RCUs are a little behind.
さらに電気エンジンが200個と、5個の素材を必要としているわけですね。ということで、これは組み立て機で作るには大変なので、自分の手で作りますね。
さあ、素材が余ってきたので、レッドベルティングというレッドベルトをあらゆるところに敷き詰めていきます。
そうですね。こうやって赤色黄色ベルトのですね、このベルトの上位ベルトにしていくことによって、
Another new bot feature. You can also upgrade.
Yes, this is where especially those red belts that we mentioned earlier will come into play in the final few minutes of the run. Just to make the final bit go ever so slightly faster.
これでロボットが少しずつ設置してくれるでしょう。このロボットのですね、動向を見るのもですね、一つファクトリオの楽しみといったところでしょうか。そうですね、青色基板の生産が開始されてますかね。下の方で多分開始されてるんですが。
わお
ああ、なるほど。ここがちょっとだけ青色サイエンスパックの赤色インサートが足りなかったようですね。このようにですね、なかなか長いランではですね、ミスも少しずつ出てくるわけですね。こういうのですね。
Here's the concrete. Looks like it needs a little bit more steel.
なかなか難易度の高いスピードランになっているわけですね。
That's okay. Silo is not finished researching yet.
Yeah, as we saw there, a few of the labs had lost their inserters.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can tell the labs are turned on. They're glowing nicely. So anytime you see them without their glow, usually something's wrong. You get sad and a little scared.
Yeah, but it seemed like things are working out now, at least.
Yep. Alright. Concrete looks good, steel looks good.
そうですね、そこら辺の、稼働を早めてやる感じですかね。
ここの回路がぶっ壊れてたので、ちょっと出力が落ちてます。
そうですね、この回路がちょっと正常に起動してなかったのでですね、ロケットに必要な最後の部品であるね、ロケット制御部品がちょっと正常に作られてなかったという感じですかね。これはですね、非常に多くのスピードランナーがやるミスでして、これによってですね、
Just the size difference between where we were half an hour ago to where we are now is nuts.
Yes, the power of our robot friends, our ever-increasing robot army.
あとね、数が数えられなくなります、このゲームをしてると。忙しすぎて。
すごい忙しいですもんね。
カウンティングハードって言います。いらんもん全部ゴミ箱にぶち込んでおきましょう。
そうですね。インベントリの整理を
Emptying out the inventory.
最終盤、インベントリは空にしてから、
All things we don't need anymore.
するのでね、その時のために備えておきますね。さあ、この少しずつ作られている白い部品がロケット制御部品になります。皆さん、このロケット制御部品がね、足りるのを祈ってください。はい。お祈りタイムです。
答え出ましたけどね、足りてません。
そうですね。このゲームはですね、この生産統計というものでしてね、
Yeah, rocket control units are way far behind, but that's okay.
アイテムが足りているかどうかを瞬時に判断できるわけですね。この状況を見ながらアイテムの生産を進めているというわけですね。
Yes, it's a very demanding and tight speed run. One little thing, and most of the time it doesn't like completely kill the run, but it just makes things go a little bit slower. Which makes things nice for being a little more marathon safe at the very least.
最後のロケットの部品、ロケットを作る速度を速めましょう。さあ、今ロケットサイロの、生産、
Go Silo, go!
これでロケットの部品をどんどん、挿入していきます。
So you'll notice we didn't set up any lines or inserters to bring stuff to the silo, and that's just because we're going to do it ourselves. We did strategically set up chests that we can pick up from, so that we can just hand insert this.
A very fitting end. We started doing things ourselves and we're ending doing something ourselves.
Yep.
And this is where all those speed module beacons really come in handy. As you saw, that progress bar usually fills very slowly. But thanks to all these beacons, it's moving at a very brisk pace.
Yep. We're going to tear down a few things because we're bumping up against our electric grid's capabilities right now. And so we want to make sure rocket control units, because they are behind, are producing as fast as possible. So we're going to decommission a few things just to make sure we have that power overhead. Every runner's nightmare right here.
Yeah, you come to the very end and something is just a little behind.
Yeah. You get to sit and you get to wait.
But you know, just gives us more time to appreciate all of the bots flying everywhere, right?
Yeah.
さあ、もう少しですね。現在、80% でしょうか ?80 何%まで来ましたね。さあ、頑張れ。頑張れ、工場。
全部行ってしまいましょう。
行ってしまいましょう。もう、全突破で行きましょう。うおー。この1時間、そうですね、だいたい20分から30分の間でしょうか、そこら辺にですね、最後の魔物が潜んでいるわけですね。いやー、これなかなか厄介ですよね。まあ、しかしですね、この魔物を倒すことによってですね、クリア時間が飛躍的に伸びるということもありますので、この魔物は
So close.
倒さなければならないというわけですね。
So very close, just a little bit more to the finish line.
Yep.
あと10個です。
あと10個ですか。わかりました。ちょっとですね、今、配信画面の方がですね。
And there we go, that noise means the rocket is ready.
さあ、これで、もう少しですね。さあ、もう少し、あと10個でロケット打ち上がりました。ロケット来ましたね。ロケットがやっとロケットサイロから、姿を見せました。これでロケットが打ち上がります。さあ、このゲームクリアの瞬間です。皆さん、クリアの瞬間には GG をお願いします。
Few hiccups here and there, but a very good run overall.
Yeah, most of the hiccups were very minor or at the very end there. We got through a lot of the harder parts of the run without too much issue.
Yeah.
So solid run.
GG's, Mazbot.
タイムがですね、
Good
非常に
job,
速いタイムにな
Maxmot.
ります。
Thank you for
こ
running
れ
for
はですね、
us.
世界でも10位以内に入っているぐらいのタイムでしょうかね。少しミスをしても、今までの貯蓄があるので、これだけ速いスピードを叩き出せるというわけですね。さあ、皆さん見てください、この大きな工場。これをですね、一人の手で作ってきたわけです。さあ、松本さんどうですか？
That'll be it for us.
いや
Dead Rising's coming up
やられま
next.
したね。
そうですね、
Yes,
最
thank
後
you
の
So-
for
方
watching
ここから
and
非常に
continue
良か
to
ったんです
enjoy
け
the
ども、
rest of the
最後の方に
marathon.
ちょいと
Yeah,
ミスがありま
keep
した
supporting
ね。
our friends over at RTA In
ガーバー
Japan.
ガーバーでしたね。
いやー、なかなかね、最後でミスなんか走り通すのは難しいものですね。
すいません、もう少しかっこいいランができるかなと思ってたんですけども。
いやいやいや、もう最高のランでしたよ。まあちょっとね、最後にミスが出ちゃっただけでね、全然タイムとしてはいいタイムなのでね、問題ないと思います。
よし、ありがとうございます。ノノック
はい、あり
さん、
がとうございます。
何かアナウンス等ありますか？
あ、そうですね、先ほども言ったんですけれどもね、体験版は無料です。なので、皆さん、これだけでも2、30時間軽く遊べるのでですね、ぜひ遊んでみてくださいね。またですね、スピードランに、これから始めてみたいよという方はですね、ファクトリオスピードランの日本コミュニティにですね、ぜひお越しください。日本コミュニティはですね、私が運営してるんですけれども、疑問等があればね、素早く答えますので、ぜひね、皆さん、日本コミュニティにお越しください。はい、以上です。
私の方から3点感謝の言葉を述べさせていただきたいと思います。I really want to say thank you to Team SteelX. You gave me a great opportunity to enjoy this amazing game. Thank you, Bananas and SteelX. それから運営ボランティアの皆さん、ありがとうございました。奏者側として参加させていただいて、とてつもない仕事だなと痛感しました。非常に良い経験になりました。ありがとうございます。最後に視聴者の皆さん、ありがとうございました。チームの某レビューに匹敵する時間、このゲームを遊んできましたが、この100分がね、一番ハラハラして面白かったです。
そうですね。
RT は基本的に常軌を逸した遊び方で、一見孤独な戦いにも見えるんですけども、やはり視聴者の方がいて応援してもらってるからこそ続けられるんだと思いました。本日はどうもありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。
これにてファクトリオ 2% を終了させていただきます。奏者松本と
解説のノノックスでした。
ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。
バイバイ。
さよなら。